She kissed me that morning, told me not to work too late, said she had plans with a friend. I believed her. The tickets were still warm from the printer when I found them. $5,000. 2 seats. Oceanfront suite. Valentine's weekend. And his name wasn't hard to recognize. I stood there in our home office staring at that reservation like it was written in a language I didn't understand. My heart didn't race. It didn't shatter. It just slowed, like something inside me had quietly stepped back. I didn't confront her, didn't call, didn't throw anything. I folded the papers neatly, put them back exactly how I found them. Then I ordered flowers. Not roses, orchids, white, and I sent them to the hotel. But inside that delivery box, there weren't petals, just divorce papers. Folks, Uncle Mickle here. Didn't think I'd ever tell this one out loud. I'm not proud of how calm I was that day. That's probably the part that unsettles me most when I look back. You'd think a man finding something like that would explode, break something, drive across town and make a scene. I didn't. I went to work, answered emails, took a lunch meeting, even joked with a co-worker about fantasy football. Meanwhile, my wife, was counting down to a romantic getaway with another man. And here's the strange thing. I wasn't shocked in the way movies tell you to be shocked. There was no cinematic music swelling in my chest, no dramatic realization, just this quiet, sinking awareness that something I'd been holding onto for years had already slipped through my fingers. Maybe I'd known longer than I admitted. Maybe the tickets weren't the beginning. Maybe they were just proof. That morning she hugged me at the door a little tighter than usual. Or maybe that's my memory rewriting it. Funny how betrayal messes with your timeline. She said, "Don't wait up." And I remember thinking, that's an odd thing to say on Valentine's Day. But I brushed it off. I brushed off a lot of things. If you're listening right now, and you've ever ignored a gut feeling because the alternative felt too heavy to face, you know what I mean. We protect a version of reality that hurts less, until it hurts more. The man's name on that reservation wasn't unfamiliar. Mark. I'd heard it before. Co-worker. Just a friend. The kind of friend who texted late sometimes. The kind who understood her career stress. I told myself I wasn't the jealous type. I prided myself on that. Thought it made me mature. Maybe it just made me blind. Or maybe I didn't want to see. That $5,000 trip wasn't just expensive. It was intentional. Thought out. Planned. That kind of betrayal doesn't happen by accident. And standing there in that office, holding those tickets, I realized something that cut deeper than the affair itself. She thought I wouldn't find out. She thought I was too busy, too distracted, too predictable. That part stung. Not the other man. Not even the lies. It was the assumption that I wouldn't matter enough to notice. So I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I got quiet. And when a man like me gets quiet, it means he's deciding something. I didn't know yet what I was going to do. But I knew one thing. Valentine's Day wasn't going to go the way she planned. And neither was the rest of our marriage. That was the beginning. Not of the end, but of the truth. And the truth doesn't arrive loud. Sometimes it shows up printed in black ink, sitting on your desk, waiting for you to finally look at it. Before all that, before the tickets, before the orchids, before I learned how quiet a marriage can become without you noticing, there was us. Me and Laura. We met in Chicago. Not in some dramatic, movie scene kind of way. It was a mutual friend's barbecue. I almost didn't go. Long week at work. I was still figuring out who I was back then. Late 30s. Solid job in logistics management. But not exactly thrilled about it. Just steady. Laura walked in wearing jeans and this faded green sweater that looked like she'd owned it forever. No heavy makeup. No loud entrance. She laughed at something across the yard before I even knew who she was. That laugh. It wasn't polished. It was real. A little sharp at the end. I liked that. We talked by the cooler for almost an hour. Not flirting hard. Just easy conversation. She told me about her marketing job. Said she hated office politics, but loved creative work. I told her I liked predictability. She teased me for that. Predictable can be good, she said. It means stable. Back then, that felt like a compliment. We dated slow. No whirlwind. No dramatic declarations. Just dinners, movies, Sunday grocery runs together after about 6 months. It felt grounded. I proposed 2 years later at a small Italian place we both loved. Nothing flashy. Just me, nervous as hell, asking her if she wanted to keep building a quiet life with me. She cried, said yes before I even finished a sentence. And for a while we were good. I don't mean perfect. I mean normal. We bought a modest house in a neighborhood that wasn't trendy, but felt safe. White siding. Small backyard. I planted tomatoes every spring like clockwork. She complained about the bugs, but liked fresh salsa. Friday nights were takeout, and whatever show we were into. Sometimes we argued about stupid stuff. Whose turn it was to do laundry. Why I left cabinet doors open. Nothing earth-shattering. If I'm being honest, I felt lucky. She was ambitious. Driven. She'd stay up late tweaking presentations, pacing the living room rehearsing pitches. I admired that. I told people she was smarter than me. She'd roll her eyes when I said it, but she smiled. Somewhere around year 6, her career really started climbing. Promotions, conferences, out-of-state travel. I supported it. Took on more around the house. Learned to cook more than just steaks and pasta. I remember one night, she came home from a conference in San Diego. She was energized, talking fast, telling stories about networking events and rooftop bars and industry awards. I listened, but there was this distance in her eyes. Like she'd tasted a different world. I ignored it. Marriage shifts. That's what I told myself. Seasons change. People grow. Right. We didn't have kids. Not for lack of trying at first. Then for lack of agreement. Laura wanted to wait until things felt aligned. I didn't push. I told myself timing mattered. Looking back, I wonder if we were already misaligned and just didn't want to admit it. The first real red flag, and it was small, came on a random Tuesday night. She was in the kitchen texting, smiling at her phone. I walked in and she turned it face down almost instinctively. I noticed, but I didn't ask. I told myself I trusted her. Trust isn't just believing someone won't hurt you. It's believing they wouldn't even consider it. That belief can make you complacent, or maybe it makes you hopeful. I don't know. What I do know is that our life looked stable from the outside. Friends came over for game nights. We hosted Thanksgiving twice. My sister once told me, "You two seem solid." I believed that too. We weren't loud. We weren't dramatic. We were the couple that paid bills on time and showed up early to events. And maybe that's why what happened later felt so surgical. No chaos beforehand. No screaming matches. Just subtle drift. If you've ever been in a relationship where nothing is technically wrong, but something feels thinner, you know what I mean. You can't point at it. You can't name it. You just feel it. Laura started working later more often. Client dinners. Team strategy sessions. She'd come home smelling like hotel soap sometimes. Those little bottled shampoos you only get when you've stayed somewhere else. I'd ask how the meeting went. She'd give me highlights, never details. And I didn't press, because pressing felt accusatory. And I didn't want to be that guy. Maybe that was my mistake. I thought stability meant silence. I thought love meant giving space without questions. But space, left unattended, turns into distance. And distance, well, distance can fit another person inside it. I didn't know that yet. I just knew something had shifted. Not broken. Shifted. And I told myself it was temporary. I'm curious. Have you ever convinced yourself everything's fine because admitting otherwise would mean changing your whole life? That's where I was. Standing in a house I thought was solid, with a woman I thought I knew, not realizing the ground had already started moving. The first real crack didn't come from the tickets. It came from a receipt. I almost missed it. It was a Thursday evening. Laura had asked me to grab a folder from her work bag because she needed it early the next morning. Her laptop sleeve was unzipped, papers slightly spilling out. I wasn't snooping. I wasn't looking for anything. I was just helping. A folded receipt slipped onto the floor when I picked the bag up. I bent down, grabbed it, and noticed the total before I even meant to read it. $1,184.76. I remember thinking, that's not dinner. It was from a boutique hotel downtown. Not one of the big conference chains. One of those places couples book for anniversaries. Soft lighting. Rooftop bar. King Suites. The date was 2 weeks prior. She'd told me she was at a late strategy session that night. I stood there longer than I should have. The paper felt heavier than it was. Maybe it was for a client, I told myself. Maybe she was booking something for work. That explanation lasted about 30 seconds, because the room was listed as a romantic package. I didn't confront her. I folded it back up and placed it exactly where it had fallen. My heart didn't pound. It didn't race. It just tightened, like a slow grip. That night, she came home around 10, smiling, a little flushed from the cold. "How was your day?" she asked. Normal tone, normal face. I studied her longer than usual. "Fine," I said. "You?" "Busy. Exhausting. I'm glad it's almost the weekend." She kissed my cheek. Warm, familiar, and for the first time in our marriage, that kiss felt rehearsed. I didn't sleep much that night. I kept replaying the receipt in my head. The wording, the timing, the way she'd been texting more lately, the way she angled her phone screen away from me. Small things, individually harmless. Together, something else. The next clue came 3 days later. She was in the shower. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. Not once. 3 times. I don't make a habit of checking phones. I never have. But something in me had already shifted. I looked. The name on the screen was Mark. The message preview read, "Counting down. Can't wait to finally have you to myself." I wish I could tell you I misread it. I didn't. My stomach didn't drop the way people describe. It was more like a cold wave rolled through my chest and settled there. I put the phone back exactly how it was. When she came out of the bathroom, hair damp, towel wrapped tight, she smiled at me like nothing in the world was wrong. And that's when it hit me. She wasn't confused. She wasn't conflicted. She was planning. There's a difference. Over the next week, I didn't confront her. I observed. Late nights increased. She started dressing sharper on days that weren't important. She laughed at texts and didn't explain why. And I watched myself becoming someone I didn't recognize. Quieter, more analytical, less emotional. I started checking bank statements, subtle charges, restaurant tabs for 2, ride shares at odd hours. Each discovery wasn't explosive. It was cumulative, like watching water slowly rise in a room you're standing in. The real turning point before the tickets was a conversation we had on a Sunday morning. I asked her gently, "Are we okay?" She looked at me like I'd asked something unreasonable. "Of course we are. Why wouldn't we be?" Her tone wasn't defensive. It was dismissive. And that hurt more, because it meant she didn't even think the gap between us was noticeable. Or maybe she thought I wouldn't question it. That's when I realized something uncomfortable. If I confronted her without undeniable proof, she'd likely deny it. And I wasn't ready for that. I wasn't ready to be told I was paranoid. So I waited. I told myself I was gathering clarity. But if I'm honest, part of me was afraid of hearing the confirmation out loud. Then came Valentine's week. She mentioned casually that she'd be out with friends that Friday night. No eye contact when she said it, just busying herself with her coffee. And that's when something inside me stopped hoping, stopped negotiating, stopped pretending. Because deep down I knew. I just didn't have the final piece yet. And I had a choice. Confront her with suspicions and risk being gaslit. Or wait for the truth to surface fully. I chose to wait. And sometimes, waiting is the hardest decision a man makes. Because you know what's coming. You just don't know how much it's going to cost you when it arrives. The tickets weren't hidden well. That's what keeps replaying in my mind. They weren't locked away in a password-protected folder. They weren't buried in some secret email account. They were printed, folded once, slipped inside the back of her desk drawer like an afterthought. Like she wasn't worried. Or maybe like she was tired of hiding. It was Wednesday afternoon. I'd come home early because a client meeting got canceled. The house was quiet. Sunlight coming through the office blinds in those thin stripes that make dust look like it's floating in slow motion. I wasn't looking for anything. I opened her desk drawer because we keep spare printer paper in there. That's it. That's how small the moment was. And then I saw the corner of the reservation sticking out from under a notebook. At first I thought it was work travel, until I read the header. Valentine's Coastal Escape, Oceanfront King Suite. 2 guests. Check-in Friday 4 p.m. Check-out Sunday. Total $5,032.44. $5,000. I remember blinking. Once. Twice. Like maybe the numbers would rearrange themselves into something logical. They didn't. Then I saw the name under guest 2. Mark Reynolds. There it was. Printed clean. Official. Not a flirty text. Not a vague hotel charge. His name next to hers. Like they were a unit. I sat down in her office chair. The room felt smaller than usual. There's a strange moment when suspicion becomes fact. It's not loud. It's not cinematic. It's clinical. I wasn't guessing anymore. I wasn't interpreting tone. I was holding evidence. I checked the dates again. Valentine's weekend. She'd told me she was having a girls' spa retreat. I actually smiled when she first mentioned it. Told her she deserved it. I remember that now, and it stings more than the lie. I flipped the page over. There were notes printed underneath, add-ons. Champagne arrival package. Private sunset cruise. Couples massage. Every detail intentional. This wasn't spontaneous. This wasn't emotional confusion. This was planned intimacy. My hands didn't shake. I wish they had. Shaking would have meant I still felt connected to the shock. Instead, everything inside me went still. Too still. I leaned back in the chair and stared at the ceiling. 8 years. 8 years of shared meals. Shared bills. Shared mornings. And she was investing $5,000 into a weekend with another man. Not sneaking around cheaply. Celebrating. I tried to picture them there. Him opening the champagne. Her laughing that laugh I fell for at that barbecue. I stopped myself. There's a line between processing and torturing yourself. I wasn't going to cross it. I stood up and placed the papers exactly how I found them. Folded once. Notebook on top. Drawer half open, like she'd left it. Precision matters in moments like that. If she suspected I knew too early, she'd cancel. She'd pivot. She'd spin a story. I didn't want a story. I wanted truth. And truth sometimes requires patience. I walked into the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water. My reflection in the microwave door looked older. Not broken. Just tired. I remember thinking, so this is what betrayal feels like when you're past 35. It's not dramatic. It's heavy. I sat at the kitchen table for a long time, going through scenarios. Confront her immediately. Call the hotel. Message the guy. Tell her family. Each option felt reactive. Emotional. I didn't want to be reactive. I wanted to be deliberate. But here's the part one don't like admitting. For about 10 minutes, I questioned myself. Maybe it's not what it looks like. Maybe it's a marketing retreat package labeled weirdly. Maybe guest 2 is some booking technicality. I knew I was reaching, but when your marriage is on the line, your brain will bargain with reality. I picked up my phone and typed Mark's name into social media. There he was. Recent photo. Him and Laura at a work event. Closer than colleagues stand. Her hand lightly on his arm. Caption. Great partnership this quarter. Partnership. That word. I set my phone down. That was the lowest point. Not anger. Not sadness. Just the realization that I had been the only one honoring our vows for a while. And that realization empties a room inside you. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I sat there and understood something quietly. She didn't think I would ever find out. And that meant she didn't fear losing me. That's what hurt. Not the trip. Not the money. The assumption. I wasn't part of the equation anymore. I was background. Stable. Predictable. Safe. Replaceable. And sitting at that kitchen table, I knew one thing clearly. I wasn't going to beg to be chosen. If she wanted him, she could have him. But she wasn't going to keep me too. That decision formed slowly, like concrete setting. And once it's set, there was no going back. I didn't sleep much that night. Not because I was crying. Not because I was pacing. It was quieter than that. I lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to Laura breathe beside me, steady and unaware. There's something surreal about lying inches away from someone who has already stepped outside your marriage, and they don't even know you know. I kept asking myself one question. What kind of man do I want to be in this moment? Not what kind of husband. Not what kind of victim. What kind of man? Because I understood something clearly. Once I moved, I couldn't undo it. I could confront her and fight, demand explanations, cry, rage. Maybe she'd apologize. Maybe she'd say it was a mistake. Maybe she'd cancel the trip and promise counseling. Maybe. But even if she did, I would always know she planned it, paid for it, anticipated it. That changes things. Around 3 a.m., I got up quietly and went to the kitchen, made coffee I didn't really want, sat at the table in the dark, and I thought about pride. Pride can be ugly. It can make you reckless. But there's another kind, the quiet kind. The kind that says, I deserve honesty. I realized I wasn't angry in the explosive sense. I was disappointed, deeply. And disappointment doesn't scream. It withdraws. By morning, my mind was clear. I wasn't going to chase her. I wasn't going to argue her into loving me. And I wasn't going to pretend I hadn't seen what I saw. If she was willing to invest $5,000 into another man, then my response wasn't going to be emotional chaos. It was going to be finality. I went to work like normal. But instead of diving into spreadsheets, I called an attorney. I didn't dramatize it. I simply said, I need to understand my options. The lawyer asked if there was infidelity. I paused. Yes, I said. There is. Saying it out loud felt different. Real. He walked me through the basics. Assets. House. Accounts. What documentation I'd need. It was clinical. Transactional. Marriage reduced to paperwork. But here's the part one struggled with. Was I moving too fast? 8 years isn't nothing. Was I making a permanent decision based on a weekend trip? Or was I responding to months, maybe years, of quiet erosion? I went back through memories in my head. The late texts. The hotel receipt. The dismissive of course were fine. The way she'd already emotionally checked out. This wasn't a single mistake. It was a pattern. And that's when my resolve hardened. This wasn't revenge. It was alignment. She had already stepped out. I was just stepping aside. I gathered financial records over the next 2 days. Made copies. Quietly. Carefully. I didn't snoop aggressively. I just organized what was already ours. Thursday afternoon, I signed the initial divorce paperwork. My hand didn't tremble. I half expected it to. It didn't. Then came the part people asked me about most. The flowers. I didn't want to show up at the hotel. That would have been messy, public, dramatic, and I didn't want to text her mid-weekend like some bitter husband. No, if I was going to do this, it needed to be measured. I called the hotel anonymously, confirmed the reservation time, asked about delivery services in the area. Then I ordered white orchids, not red roses. That would have felt sarcastic. White, neutral, clean. I arranged for the delivery to arrive Saturday evening, right before sunset, the time listed for their private cruise. Inside the flower box, beneath the tissue paper, I placed the divorce papers. Neatly, with a pen clipped to the top page. No note, no insults, no explanation, just documents. As I sealed the envelope, I had a flicker of doubt. Was this cold? Was this cruel? Maybe. But confronting her beforehand would have given her the opportunity to rewrite the narrative, to twist it, to soften it. This way, the truth would meet her where she chose to be, on a romantic getaway she paid for, with a man who wasn't her husband. Friday morning, she kissed me goodbye. Don't wait up, she said again. That phrase. I nodded. Have fun, I told her, and I meant it in a way she couldn't understand yet. After she left, I stood in the quiet house and exhaled slowly. There's a calm that comes when you stop fighting reality. It's not happiness. It's clarity. I didn't feel victorious. I felt resolved. Because here's the truth, and I want you to hear this clearly. I wasn't trying to hurt her. I was refusing to let myself be humiliated. There's a difference. And sometimes the most powerful move a man makes isn't loud. It's controlled. By Saturday afternoon, the orchids were en route, and I was sitting at home, alone, knowing that in a few hours, everything would shift. Not explosively, but permanently. Saturday came slow. Too slow. I kept myself busy in the morning. Cleaned the garage. Changed the oil in my truck. Ordinary tasks. Grounded things. My hands needed something practical to do, while my mind waited. Around 4:15 p.m., I checked the hotel confirmation email again. Delivery scheduled, 5:40 p.m. Sunset cruise departure, 6:30 p.m. I pictured them checking in the day before. Probably laughing in that oceanfront suite. Champagne chilling in a silver bucket. I stopped myself. No. Stick to facts. At 5:32, my phone buzzed. Delivery completed. That was it. 2 words. Completed. I sat down in the recliner and stared at the wall. And then I waited. 6 minutes later, my phone rang. Laura. I let it ring twice before answering. Hey, I said. Calm. There was noise behind her. Wind maybe. Distant voices. What is this? She asked. No hello. No preface. Just that. What is what? I replied. My voice didn't shake. I'm not sure how. The flowers. The papers. What are you doing? There it was. Panic. Not sadness. Panic. I saw the reservation, I said. Silence. Then, Mickle, it's not. His name was printed next to yours. Another silence. Longer. You went through my things. Interesting pivot. I opened a drawer looking for printer paper. Her breathing changed. Quick. Unsteady. You could have talked to me. That one almost made me laugh. You were about to board a sunset cruise with him. Wind louder now. Maybe she stepped outside. It wasn't serious, she said. There's a sentence that rearranges your understanding of someone. Not serious. $5,000. Champagne. Couples massage. Private suite. Not serious. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees. Laura, I said quietly. You planned a romantic weekend with another man on Valentine's Day. She didn't answer that directly. It just happened. No, it didn't just happen. Booking confirmations don't just happen. Payment processing doesn't just happen. You don't accidentally schedule intimacy. For a split second, I questioned myself. Was I being too rigid? Too final? Should I have confronted her first? Given her space to confess? But then I remembered the hotel receipt. The texts. The dismissiveness. This wasn't a confession waiting to happen. It was a secret she intended to keep. Are you coming home? I asked. A long pause. I need time, she said. Time. To finish the weekend? To process being caught? I've already filed. I told her. That landed. You filed. Her voice cracked for the first time. Yes. You're not even willing to talk about this. I've been watching it unfold for months. Silence again. Then anger. You're being cold. Maybe I was. But cold was better than desperate. I'm being clear, I said. There was a muffled voice in the background. Male. Distant but present. She lowered her tone. Can we talk when I get back? You can call your lawyer, I replied. That was it. That was the line. She inhaled sharply. You're really doing this? Yes. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't insult her. Didn't curse. Just yes. The call ended without goodbye. I sat there for a long time afterward, waiting for some wave of triumph. It didn't come. There was no victory. Just a quiet finality. Around 7 p.m., she texted. We're leaving early. Interesting choice of words. We. I didn't respond. At 10:48 p.m., headlights pulled into the driveway. I stayed seated. The front door opened. Closed. Footsteps quick down the hallway. She stood in the living room doorway, still dressed for a romantic evening. Hair styled. Makeup done. Eyes red. How could you embarrass me like that? She asked. Embarrass. That word. I looked at her for a long moment. How could you? I replied. That was it. No shouting. No dramatic accusations. Just that mirror held up. She started crying then. Real tears. Not polished ones. I didn't think you'd find out. There it was again. Not I'm sorry. Not I was wrong. I didn't think you'd find out. And in that moment, any remaining doubt inside me dissolved. This wasn't about love. It was about secrecy. She sat on the couch, head in her hands. I don't want to lose you, she said. I believed she meant that, but not for the reasons I once would have hoped. You already did, I said quietly, and the room went still. No music swelling, no dramatic collapse. Just two people realizing the version of their marriage they'd been pretending to live in was over. The house felt different after that night. Same walls, same furniture, same faint crack in the hallway, ceiling we kept meaning to fix. But the air had changed. Laura slept in the guest room. I stayed in hours, not because I felt entitled to it, just because routine felt like the only stable thing left. I woke up at 6 a.m. Monday like I always did. Made coffee, toasted bread, the ordinary motions of a man who still had to go to work. She didn't come out of the guest room until nearly 8. Her face was pale, eyes swollen. She looked smaller somehow. "I canceled the rest of the trip," she said quietly. I nodded. There wasn't much to say to that. For the next few days, the house operated like a waiting room. We spoke politely, logistically, about groceries, about schedules, about when the attorney would reach out. She tried once to start a deeper conversation. "I wasn't unhappy," she said from across the kitchen island. "I just felt invisible." That one landed. Invisible. I thought about the tomatoes I planted every spring, the bills paid on time, the steady presence I'd prided myself on. Maybe steady had turned into background. Maybe predictable had turned into unnoticed. But invisibility doesn't justify betrayal. I would have listened, I told her. She looked down at her hands. "I didn't think you'd understand." That's the thing about assumptions. They replace communication. They build stories where conversations should have happened. Mark called once while she was in the shower. His name flashed across the counter. I let it ring. He didn't try again. Within 2 weeks, she moved into a short-term rental across town. Not dramatic. No slammed doors. Just boxes. Folded clothes. Divided kitchenware. We sat at the dining table one evening dividing books. 8 years reduced to categories. Yours. Mine. Donate. There were moments where I almost asked, "Are we really doing this?" But every time that thought surfaced, I pictured the printed reservation, the champagne package, the sunset cruise, and I steadied myself. Friends started hearing pieces of it. Not from me. From her, mostly. The narrative floated around in softened versions. We were drifting. We both made mistakes. I didn't correct anyone. There's a certain dignity in not arguing over public perception. At work, I told my manager I was going through a divorce. He nodded, didn't pry. Life keeps moving whether your marriage survives or not. Some nights were harder than I expected. Not because I missed her specifically, but because silence is loud when you're used to someone else's presence. The hum of the refrigerator felt sharper. The bed colder. I questioned myself more than once. Was I too decisive? Should I have offered counseling? Was there a version of the story where we rebuilt? Maybe. But rebuilding requires both people to stop constructing something elsewhere. And I didn't believe she had fully let go of that other version of herself yet. A month later, we met at a coffee shop to finalize some paperwork details. She looked tired, different, less polished. "I didn't think you'd choose divorce so quickly," she said. I stirred my coffee slowly. "I didn't choose it quickly," I replied. "I just didn't choose denial." She studied me for a moment, like she was seeing someone she hadn't fully noticed before. "I never thought you'd be this firm," she admitted. "Neither did I. But firmness isn't cruelty. It's clarity." The legal process moved forward. No screaming court battles. No dramatic asset fights. We split what was fair. Sold the house. I kept my truck. She kept most of the furniture. When I walked out of that house for the last time, keys in hand, I paused in the driveway. Not to mourn, to acknowledge. 8 years lived there. Not all of it was fake. Not all of it was betrayal. There were good mornings. Shared laughter. Quiet loyalty, at least from one side. And I allowed myself to feel that complexity. You can recognize the good and still walk away from the bad. They're not mutually exclusive. The divorce finalized on a gray Thursday morning. No ceremony. No applause. Just a judge's signature. I went back to work that afternoon. Life doesn't pause. And here's the part people don't always understand. I didn't hate her. Hate requires sustained emotion. What I felt was acceptance. She made a choice. Then I made one. And sometimes the most mature ending isn't explosive. It's quiet. It's been a little over 2 years now. I live in a smaller place. Condo near the edge of town. No backyard for tomatoes, but there's a balcony big enough for a couple of pots. I still plant them every spring. Some habits are worth keeping. People ask me if I've dated since. Yeah, a little. Nothing dramatic. No rush to remarry. I'm not trying to replace a chapter. I'm just writing a different one. And if I'm being honest, I'm more attentive now. Not suspicious. Not paranoid. Just aware. There's a difference. I pay attention to tone shifts, to distance, to my own gut when it nudges me. I don't dismiss discomfort just to preserve peace anymore. Peace built on silence isn't peace. It's postponement. For a long time after the divorce, I replayed that Saturday evening in my mind. The orchids, the phone call, the look on her face when she walked back into the house. I asked myself if I handled it the right way. Was sending those papers to the hotel too calculated? Too cold? Maybe. But here's what I've come to understand. If I had confronted her earlier, she would have minimized it. If I had begged her to stay, I would have disrespected myself. If I had ignored it, I would have slowly eroded from the inside. None of those paths felt like integrity. The delivery wasn't about humiliation. It was about clarity. She planned a romantic weekend with someone else. I responded with the legal reality of what that meant. No shouting, no name-calling, just consequence. And I think that's the part people struggle with. We're taught that forgiveness is always noble, that fighting for love is always brave. But sometimes walking away quietly is the bravest thing you can do, especially when you still care. Because I did care. I didn't stop loving her overnight. That's not how human attachment works. But love without respect turns into something unhealthy. And I wasn't willing to live in that version of marriage. There's one thing she said during our final coffee meeting that stuck with me. I didn't think you'd ever leave. Not because she thought I was deeply devoted, but because she thought I was predictable, stable, safe. What she didn't realize is that stability doesn't mean tolerance. Being calm doesn't mean being blind. And being loyal doesn't mean being weak. If you're listening to this, and you're sitting in a situation where something feels off, I'm not telling you to file papers tomorrow. I'm not telling you to send orchids with legal documents inside. But I am telling you this. Don't ignore yourself. Don't shrink to keep someone comfortable. Don't confuse silence with strength. Strength sometimes sounds like a quiet, steady no. And sometimes it looks like letting someone experience the full weight of their own choices. I don't regret how I handled it. I regret that it became necessary. There's a difference. Do I wish she had talked to me before it got that far? Of course. Do I wish we'd confronted the drift before another man fit into the space between us? Yeah, but wishes don't rewrite actions. Choices do. And once someone shows you they're willing to step outside the vows, without even fearing your absence, you have to decide what your presence is worth. That's the real question. What is your presence worth? Not your income. Not your stability. Not your predictability. You. If someone can risk losing you without hesitation, what does that tell you? I'll leave that sitting with you for a second. So that's my story, folks. If it resonated with you, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I want to know how far Uncle Mickle's voice travels. Know your worth, and don't negotiate it in silence.